The summer before Debbie and I moved to Bethlehem, we visited a few churches in the Lehigh Valley. We were in a discernment process, but I was also curious to see how churches did things similarly and how they did things differently, even within the same denomination. One of the lessons we learned in that process was that, at least in the Lehigh Valley, many churches make their worship starting times earlier during the summer, meaning that we had to get up pretty early some mornings to get to Bethlehem or Allentown, wherever we were going, on time. And we also missed out on some of what they were doing because of our travel time and their summer schedules that didn't have them doing some of those activities. One of the things we missed out on was the gathering place at Christ Church. A few years before we joined Christ Church, the congregation converted a chapel on the property into the gathering place. The gathering place is just that. It's a place where people can gather for special services or for conversation and fellowship. It's a place where ministry can take place with a cup of coffee and a bagel. Other than the summer, the gathering place opens on Sunday mornings for fellowship at 8:30. The church has Sunday school at 9:15 and worship at 10:30. So on our first Sunday in Bethlehem, we ventured to the gathering place. The coffee was good, and the bagel from Johnny's Bagel Shop was awesome. But the ministry taking place was something we didn't experience when we lived in Origsburg. You see, a good number of the people in the gathering place enjoying fellowship for that morning were men and women experiencing homelessness. These neighbors knew they could come in, get a hot cup of coffee and a bagel, use the restroom, and then be on their way. The gathering place on Sunday mornings was not the only opportunity to serve our siblings experiencing homelessness at Christ Church. Debbie and I volunteered a few times at the soup kitchen operated on Saturdays, and we provided a meal a couple of times on a Monday night during the winter, while the church provided shelter to women experiencing homelessness. These experiences had an impact on me. You see, up until then, homelessness was an issue. It was something I read about and heard about. It was not something I had witnessed. People experiencing homelessness were not people I had encountered. But these experiences at Christ Church changed that. Now, all of a sudden, homelessness was more than an issue. Now it was no longer homelessness, it was a person experiencing homelessness. A person just like me, a sibling in the family of God. Because now I could answer the question, who are they? So today we conclude our 3-week look at the 25th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. 2 weeks ago, we heard about the parable of the 10 bridesmaids with the message to make sure we had reserves of oil. And that oil for us is welcoming the stranger, feeding the hungry, visiting the sick and imprisoned, and making disciples in all the world. Last week, it was the parable of the talents and the message to use our gifts and abilities God provides us to build the kingdom, not to hide them and keep them to ourselves. Now today, we hear the parable of the sheep and the goats. The Son of Man returns, and all the nations, all the people of the earth are brought forth. And the people are separated like sheep and goats. The sheep go on the right, and the goats go on the left. The people on the right are invited into the kingdom because they provided for the Son of Man in his time of need. The people on the left are sent away. They ignored the man in his time of need. But notice that both the sheep and the goats are confused. When did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or in prison? And he answered them, when you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. So let's unpack this text a bit. Let's take a look at what Jesus is saying here. But before we look at what Jesus is saying here, let's remember that Jesus did not invent the idea of service to the needy during his ministry. If we look at Leviticus, we can see that landowners were to leave the edges of their fields unharvested to allow for gleaning. Strangers are to be welcomed. Deuteronomy tells employers not to exploit their workers, to pay them every day because that employee needs those wages to get his daily bread. Exodus, we're told not to take advantage of the widow or the fatherless child. And when we move from the Torah to the prophets, Amos denounces those who oppress the poor and crush the needy. Isaiah tells us that a fast pleasing to God includes distributing bread to the hungry and clothing to the naked. And Micah tells us to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. So these ideas that Jesus is talking about were not ideas that he first proclaimed in the Gospels. They're ideas that date all the way back to the Torah and work their way forward. So Jesus separates the people based on these acts of mercy done for him. When you did it for the least of these, he said, you did it for me. Catherine Matthews reminds us that the people welcomed to the kingdom responded to the needy as Jesus would because they grasped the essence of discipleship. They got what it means to be Christian. The only question here is doing acts of mercy. Jesus never asked either group what they thought of him. Salvation belongs not automatically to those who have faith, but those who do faith. Jesuit theologian Karl Rahner speaks of anonymous Christians who live out the teachings of Jesus without claiming to be followers of Christ. On one of those Saturdays at the soup kitchen, we stood side by side with our Muslim friends serving a meal to those experiencing homelessness. Side by side, we were living out the teachings of Jesus. And who are the least of these? Are they part of the community of believers? Or are they outsiders? Or are they both? Do they belong or don't they? The brothers and sisters of the Son of Man are all the people of the world who are in need, non-Christians as well as Christians. Dirk Lang reminds us the parable itself doesn't seem to be concerned about their identity, other than to identify their suffering. They're hungry, they're naked, they're imprisoned. The parable is far more focused on the life of mercy that has or has not been lived by those who call out, Lord, Lord. The only identity that seems to worry Matthew in this description of judgment is the identification of the other with the King, with the Son of Man, and with Jesus. So the man on the right is Hector. Hector is one of the skilled laborers working on the building in Monte Margarita, Guatemala. Hector is also a part of the coffee cooperative that operates the coffee processing facility that we were touring when this picture was taken. The facility is within walking distance of where the building that we're financing is being constructed. And if you look closely, you can see that black handle on Hector's right hip. Feliciano did the same thing when we left the church to walk up to the coffee processing facility. They both got their machetes and put them on their hip. Made me wonder. But anyway, Hector, while we were there, made a very interesting comment, made a very interesting statement. He said, I don't belong to a church. And in the past, when church groups came to provide aid in the community, they would only assist those who belonged to the church. When we meaning the Penn Northeast Conference, when the Penn Northeast Conference sent the medical team down and they had the clinic in the farm where this coffee processing facility is located, everyone was welcomed. It didn't matter whether they belonged to a church or not. They were people in need, and they were provided the help they needed. The only identity that seems to worry Matthew in this description of judgment is the identification of the other with the King, with the Son of Man, with Jesus. So in his parable, the sheep and the goats, Jesus identifies 6 acts of mercy, 6 ways we can help the poor, the oppressed, and the marginalized. Jesus identifies as our siblings. I would suggest, friends, that these 6 acts of mercy are illustrations. They are not exclusive. They are not an exhaustive list. I would suspect that if we went around this sanctuary, we could name several more acts of mercy being done by people in this congregation that we could add to the list Jesus used here. Now, aside from financing a medical clinic, there are many interesting ways that we can help people in the two-thirds world to overcome poverty. And let me share one with you. This is Dylan. Dylan's about 6 months old in that picture, and Dylan is laying on a bed that his mother prepared for him. When we first encountered his mother, she was holding him. His mother is a shopkeeper, a business owner, if you will. And she's holding him, and she's got a shop full of paintings and scarves and table runners. This is one of her it's my table runner now. I bought it from her. I bought this table runner from Dylan's mom while we were there. She put Dylan down on that bed when she had to get a painting down that somebody bought from her. Dylan's mom is 20. She has a 3-year-old son that was at home. He was not there that day. So the merchandise in her shop included these paintings and the scarves and the table runners, and there's another one at home, slightly different shades. And when I saw all that merchandise, I was reminded of an organization called Kiva. Kiva, according to their website, is an international nonprofit founded in 2005 and based in San Francisco. Its mission is to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty. Kiva celebrates and supports people looking to create a better future for themselves, their families, and their community. People like Dylan's mom. I learned about Kiva in a seminary class, and right now I'm on my 3rd or 4th loan. I relend when the previous loan has been paid off. You and I can be part of a loan through Kiva for as little as $25. All you need to do is go to Kiva's website, select the borrower, and an amount we are willing to lend. Our funds are then combined with others, kiva.com, I believe. K-I-V-A. My critic is back there. Go to the website, and then Kiva pools our funds with other funds to make the loan to the borrower. And you can select the country and the borrower you want to make the loan to from their list of approved credits. I was reminded of Kiva by Dylan's mom because some of the borrowers that I've loaned to were shopkeepers like her looking to borrow money to replenish their inventory for their stores or their shops. Dylan's mom provided an in-person answer to the question, who are they? So this is a fairly easy way that from the comfort of our own homes, we can help someone in the two-thirds world break the cycle of poverty. Other ways are more complicated. I mentioned earlier that Hector is part of the coffee processing facility we toured. So is his mom and her children. Mom and the children brought the coffee to the processing facility because Dad was off somewhere out of the community working. So the little girl got her arms on that dark-colored bag. I'd say color, but Debbie probably tell me I guessed wrong. And the mom has the bigger bag. So then the mom took the little girl's bag. The little girl carried that bag, and the mom carried the bigger bag. So the little girl's bag was added into the mom's bag, and then they took it to a scale to weigh it. It takes 5 pounds of raw coffee beans to make 1 pound of beans that can then be sent to be roasted. So there's that much skin and water and everything else in these beans as they're brought into the facility. This is a co-op. So the facility, each person when they bring their beans weighs them and logs them. And then at the end of the process, then they allocate profits, if there are any, in proportion to the weight of beans that each individual brought into the facility. Now here's where it gets interesting. Over the last several years, the price the co-op receives for the beans has gone from 1,000 quetzales per 100 pounds to 500 quetzales per 100 pounds, making it almost impossible for the coffee growers to break the cycle of poverty. It makes me wonder about the true cost of the inexpensive coffee I get at Weis or Walmart. Seeing that, I now have another answer to the question. Who are they? Last week, Bill told us that 310 families received food from the food pantry this month. And that food included over 4,000 pounds of turkeys. Carol tells us that about 50 children are being helped by the backpack program. Census data tells us that over 23% of our neighbors in Pocono Pines live in poverty. And the United Way tells us that one of the highest concentrations of childhood poverty in Monroe County is in western Tobyhanna Township. So my question is, who are they? Amen.